I'm going to talk about one of our investment companies that we've been seeding for the last couple of years, which is basically, I've spent the last 20 years of my life between technology, payment systems, and hospitality, and I was trying to figure out how to put it all together. And a few years ago, we were looking at changes in demographic and how the hotel industry was going to be affected by millennials and how they think and behave differently. So I have 4 millennials, actually Gen Z's millennials as children, and I was looking at how they behave in terms of how they watch TV, how they play video games, how they're doing all these different things. And I realized that the world was going to change. And now we have 2 billion of them in the world, and say, how is that going to really affect hospitality? Pretty much hotels, which is where we've spent the last decade acquiring and understanding that space. So when when people started talking to me about blockchain a couple of years ago, I said, okay, what's this? I mean, what is blockchain? And I didn't even have a clue. And then I started looking at cryptocurrencies and got even more confused of what it meant. And took the last 2 years to really dive deep into it and try to understand how it's going to affect it. So this is what the result is, which is what we call STEP, which is Simple Travel Ecosystem Protocol. And basically what we did is we created what we call not a single coin, but an ecosystem of coins that basically solve the fundamental problems that a hospitality owner has. So we looked at it from the hospitality point of view, and then from the behavioral point of view of the consumer, and how the consumer had already changed, and it's going to change in terms of how he consumes. So here, that one of the big statistics, and I wanted to frame the global, I'm not going to go in deep into the technical elements. We could be here for a week talking about scalability issues of blockchain and the different blockchains, and that's something that won't be solved probably even this year. But a lot of people with a lot of money are looking at it. But this is a very interesting quote, which is the World Economic Forum has found that 58% of executives anticipate that 10% of global GDP will be on the blockchain by 2025. So if you think of cycles of technology, we look at the last couple cycles, and they're very clear. I mean, we have major companies which are amazing in terms of the things they've delivered and how they aggregate clients, which are the big OTAs, correct? The Expedias of the world, the Pricelines of the world. They took the internet, they run with it, and 20 years later, now they are massive companies delivering value to the consumer and to the market. And then 10 years ago, there's another cycle came in, and the new sharing economy structures came in, and they basically said, okay, why don't we invent this thing called Airbnb, and we do this asset-light model, and basically now we have what Airbnb is, which is another revolution in it. We believe that blockchain and crypto economics and all the crypto associated to it will be that next cycle coming in, and will take the same way that it took, the OTAs 20 years to become what they are. It's going to, an Airbnb a decade, it's going to be a long process to get to where it is, but it will get there. I remember internet days when we built some companies around that and sold in the internet days, 1999. It's exactly the same process, the same thinking, the same speed, the same amount of capital coming in from venture capital, and now obviously from the ICOs. So when we look at opportunity to travel, I mean, we all know this statistic is a massive 10% of GDP, employing 1 out of 10 jobs of the world, 300 million people employed. And so that would translate basically onto, if 10% of global GDP will be that, then $1 trillion worth of travel will eventually be in the blockchain within 10 years. So that's the basically, if we all look at statistics. So specifically in blockchain, if we look at the 5 things that are going to be driving it, again, taking out technology and all the things, ifs about the scalability of the technology, there's a massive market size already in place. There's a $500 billion market cap, and if you look at all the cryptocurrencies and put them together, so it means there's already a huge amount of purchasing power that can be moved around, like Voy was saying, which I thought it was a great presentation. On the loyalty side, we 100% believe that that's exactly one of the directions it's going to happen, and you're going to see it here. Basically, you're going to see how a lot of that currency then now interoperates together, and it becomes like a massive loyalty program. So those $500 billion are off the grid, are off the banking grid. So we're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the altcoins out there, like things like Ripple, for example, which is very high valuation. So the second thing is space of adoption, similar to the internet. We have to think that it's 1995 internet days. So Netscape is basically just went public. And everybody wakes up one day and says, what's this thing called the internet? But it was still clunky. Amazon just came out, and you went to the Amazon site, and it was super bad. And they were selling books, and Barnes & Noble was going to saying they were going to kill Amazon, correct? So now we're in exactly that same position with blockchain. We're in 1995 internet days. There's a new paradigm for almost every industry. So we're seeing major players like TUI, obviously Walmart and Pfizer completing successful blockchain pilots in intranet pilots that basically allows them to use the blockchain in very successful internal ways. And then investor appetite. I think that this is one of the things that if you haven't heard, there's a company that raised in a year $4 billion on an ICO called EOS, backed by a company called Block One. And EOS basically is creating an operating system to scale the blockchain globally, basically. And EOS now has $4 billion to go and do it. So this is pretty much been raised in a year by an ICO. So that's outside the $6 billion that have been raised by many other smaller ICOs. We were going to have here Winding Tree, which is another player, which raised $15 million in the space. So it's just interesting to see what's going on in the space. So what I think the most important element of this is that change behaviorally has already happened. People don't realize that people are already living in virtual worlds, and those 2 billion millennials basically already use virtual currencies in games, for video games and for everything they do in their half their mental lives, which is virtual. So you have 2 billion annually. They're all crypto natives and believers. They're rebelling against centralization. It's all these things we're seeing about, obviously, Facebook are that first pushback at centralization, driven by experiences. We all know that. That's why everybody's betting on that. Will inherit a huge amount of money to travel. So there's going to be a $30 trillion transfer of wealth from Gen X's to millennials. They're born with mobile, social media, sharing economy, and crypto. For them, these things are completely natural. There's nothing unnatural about the crypto and having a wallet with multiple coins. Absolutely nothing. Something very funny happened to me the other day. I was in New York with my daughter, and we're always in Uber, and I hail a cab, and I get on a cab, and she had never been in a cab. And she couldn't understand. She fell completely off the space. And the thing is, this is a 17-year-old. So you have a completely change in mindset of how people use stuff and how people are now relating to stuff. Obviously, need of transparency and identity protection. We saw it in the Void presentation. Fundamental identity protection is going to be something that the blockchain will solve, and coins will solve, and all that. And then sense of belonging, obviously. They want to be part of these things. So as coins proliferate, there's going to be a coin to access, go and see the turtles and see what anejo when they come out, and somebody's going to own those coins because they're backing that, nonprofit. So those type of things that are going to be starting to become, and there are going to be thousands and thousands of different coins that behave differently and have different, programmable money capabilities, and are born to travel. That's one of the most important things. For us here, all these people, from China to India to Africa to Latin America to the US, they are natural travelers. And now, as a lot of you know, the statistic is the millennials are spending more than Gen X's in amount of money for travel. Evolution of travel ecosystems, you guys know this better than I do, probably. Large industry players consolidating, continue to consolidate. Margins, obviously, OTAs have great margins, and that's a lot of the discussion is, if you're a hotel owner, is how do I get off all that? How do I depend less on that part? And then the few big hotel brands that are really creating, managing those loyalty programs. And when you sit down with the Marriott or with all of those things, they're really waving this big stick called 100 million people that are in my loyalty program. And it's wonderful. They've done great things. They're great companies, but they have very limited processes in terms of how to interoperate those loyalty programs. And then obviously Airbnb coming in to revolutionize ad inventory and create all this new dynamic around sharing economy and new business models. So what is the impact after a couple of years of thinking and looking at this, and I'm really looking at the broad scope of where we see the major processes coming in, are obviously distribution, alternative distribution channels. We don't see blockchain coming in to substitute the OTAs. We see it as a new additional alternative channel, like OTAs were 20 years ago when they came to be, and then hotels looked at it, oh, this is another way to distribute. So blockchain and this, what we call blockchain travel ecosystems, will basically become new alternative channels, what we call the fifth channel, the new independent channels that are going to be available for a hotel owner to say, okay, how can I now become and use this tool to reduce my dependency on other potential channels that are more costly or just for diversity. So these new blockchain distribution ecosystems will appear, and there are probably 10 companies out there trying to do this. And basically we are one BT. Step is a BT. We spend a lot of time, and we filed about 7 patents already on the process of how do we see it happening. We don't see a single coin solution. We think it's multiple coin solutions around it that really solve different problems, because there is really a bipolarity between the coin, this original coin designs of the last year to now, because coins should be, if a coin is meant to be transactional, it should meant to be stable. So it should be backed by something that stabilizes the coin. It should not be floating 40% up or down. Doesn't make any sense for somebody making a reservation. But if you're backing a platform, yeah, that platform, if it becomes successful, it should go up 10x, like the shares of any company that does it. And if you're backing also the tokenization eventually of rooms. So we see that the side effects, and what we found is there were some side effects that happened in this, and when we really dove deep into the crypto economics of building this stable token, basically what we realized is there was a side effect called, you eventually can securitize a room night, basically creating almost like a timeshare effect on any hotel room. So if you can tokenize a room night, eventually then potentially can sell it into the future. So potentially there's a futures market of hotel rooms that allows me as a hotel owner to potentially stabilize my revenue, sell into the future my revenue, and basically create a new financing tool for me to grow. Or to stabilize my revenue. And then loyalty, we heard it from Void, 100% in the same line, which is coins become basically our loyalty. Coins are basically loyalty points, are basically miles. Basically, the difference is that if I am operating with thousands and thousands and thousands of coins worldwide, I'm already interconnected to everyone. I only need to program basically my interoperability with those coins, but ultimately, the currency can be operating against every single coin out there, becomes part of my loyalty program. So it really destroys existing loyalty programs and creates a whole new world of loyalty. So the blockchain travel ecosystems, again, I think that to really go deep into what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an ecosystem that solves the 3 main problems of a hotel owner or hospitality owner, which are alternative distribution channels, next generation loyalty programs, and create new financing platforms. So basically we solve the 3 problems that any owner will have into the future owning a real hospitality asset. And then why? Well, there's a change of behavior. This is happening not because we have the technology, not because it's available, it's because the client's going to want it. And that's really what the power of it is. And how? I think that the crypto economic side of it is the most exciting part. The blockchain side of technology is pretty straightforward. It's a global ledger, distributed global ledger. And then what you do with the global ledger, how do you program the money that is riding on top of that? That's the power that we've never had before in the history of the world. And I think just to wrap up in conclusion is it's really you have 5 forces when the crypto and digital native traveler in the center, which is this new generation traveler that is crypto enabled and it's using the wallet and the coins. And then you have obviously loyalty on one side with open protocols, and then you have travel and hospitality, a huge massive industry, and then eventually also real estate, because everything we do eventually, in our case, affects the actual asset, underlying asset of the hotel, so how that asset gets monetized and what's the return of that asset. And blockchain bringing in obviously evolving, transformative, evolving, and hard to understand today, but eventually will be transparent. You'll be able to book and do this and have your coins same way that you book today Expedia or Booking.com. I use Expedia and Booking every single day. I travel every week, so every single day I use the app, and it works perfectly. So it will work the same way. So from a practical point of view, I think we're starting this process where it will take a decade, but eventually we'll be having this conversation many years from now, and we'll say, well, it's obvious what's going to happen, but we're back in 1995 internet days, and we're very excited to be here and listen to everybody's feedback. Thank you.